Okay, welcome to part three. In part three, we'll be discussing the competitive model. The competitive model means our entire analysis is based on a concept called perfect competition. In the last week, we said that perfect competition does not exist, like the human temperature 98.4 degrees Fahrenheit. But perfect competition is a benchmark against which we will compare our real world outcomes. Perfect competition is a benchmark within which we will conduct our analysis. এই মুহূর্তে কি if we take the body temperature of everybody, কারো কি 98.4 আসবে? কারো 98.4 আসবে না. Will we have an perfect pulse of 72 to 80? Will we have a perfect blood pressure of 80 and 120?
No,
We
sir.
won't.
It will be fluctuate.
It will fluctuate. That's the reality. But the thing is, these indicators are the benchmark against which we're going to we compare our pulse, we compare our blood pressure, and we also compare the body temperature. So perfect competition is also like that. But then perfect competition does have some good signs. Achha, so first of all transactions are based in the market. And the market we have defined in the beginning as two components: households, who are the buyers, firms, who are the sellers. It's an institution that encourages large-scale cooperation. Achha, large-scale cooperation is সুবিধাটা কি? Without any central coordination over here, central coordination, uh, lots of transactions can be made, and the government doesn't have to monitor it. A governing authority doesn't have to monitor it. Now, for example, Brack University, it's not a government, but Brack University has a governing authority. They don't govern everything that you do. Lots of things happen spontaneously. Acha. All decisions are made rationally. What do you mean by rationality? We have already answered this question. By rationality means if it is something that we like, we try to see the maximum of it. Profits, utility. If it is something that we don't like, we try to see the minimum of it. Costs, expenditure. So when we make a rational decision, if it is something that's going to make us happy, we go for a maximization attitude. If it is something that's not going to make us happy, will give us pain, the rational thing is to reduce it as much as possible within the environment that we find ourselves in. That makes sense, right?
Yes, sir.
So if we are looking at households love utility, happiness from consuming, so they want to maximize it as much as possible, given the cost that they have to bear. Households don't like expenditure, they want to minimize expenditure. But the catch is, if you want to minimize expenditure, you can end up spending nothing. If somebody wants to minimize expenditure, they find out that the expenditure is zero. If you don't spend anything at all, will you get any happiness out of life?
No, sir.
So when we minimize something, it is against a fixed happiness. For example, in Dhaka city, we have to survive. So these are the basic amenities that we expect. What is the cost? What's the minimum cost in order to ensure basic amenities? Then we have a fixed utility, that these are the amenities that we expect in order to survive in this city. Okay, now these amenities we can get spending a lot of money, we can get spending less money. So when we are talking about a minimization problem, we want to reduce our expenditure, but we have to ensure that a fixed amount of happiness is ensured. Is that clear? A standard of living. Once we get into the details, it will be more clear, but এটা তো ঠিক. if we can ensure a certain amount of happiness, ঠিক আছে, then we can find out, in order to maintain this particular standard of living, what is the minimum cost. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Finding happiness means we
Yes,
have to
sir.
spend a certain amount of money in order to, ঠিক আছে, that part is very simple. But when we look at it from the opposite point of view, that we want to reduce our expenditures, then one thing can come into mind, that if I don't spend money, what will happen? If I don't spend at all, I don't get any happiness out of it. So when we minimize a problem, then we minimize it in relation to a minimum standard of living that we expect. This standard of living, yes, now you can come into an argument. I can spend a lot of money to get this standard of living. I can spend less money to get that standard of living. So the rational thing would be to maintain that particular standard of living. What is the minimum cost that I have to bear? Where are we? So exchanges between households, this one is rationally done, and farms, their objective is to maximize profits. আচ্ছা, competition-টা কি? Competition হচ্ছে when farms compete for market share. Last week we defined what market share is. If Brack University has decided to upgrade their computer lab, they might end up buying, say, 300 computers. This is the total market demand. Now, 4 or 5 companies are going to sell those their computers to Brack University. So what is the target for every person? For every farm, their target will be to sell as many computers as they can to Brack University, right?
Yes, sir.
Knowing that the total demand is 300 computers. ঠিক আছে? So market share means what is the total transactions in the market. Of this, I will try to sell as much as I can. If I look at farms as sellers, if I look at farms as buyers, I'll try to buy as much as I can, given the environment that I find myself in. Achha, competition is when no farm or group or farms has unequal market share. Unequal does not mean exactly everybody has the same amount, but when competition is fair. Economics assumes basic competition where market share is 0. That means if I'm selling bananas in the market, and if there are 20 million people in Dhaka city, each person has one banana every day, then the total demand will be 20 million bananas per day. Now, as a single buyer or a single seller, my total market share will be almost near to 0. This is the assumption that we start off with. Later on, we'll break it. Consumers are rational. They maximize net utility or net expenditure. Farms are rational. They try to maximize profits or minimize costs. Now, net functions. Why? In order to get a benefit, I have to pay a cost. The reverse is also true. For a certain amount of the standard of living, the benefit, what is the minimum cost that I have to bear? We've already done this, now. Oh, perfect competition does not exist in reality, like our human body temperature, the ideal blood pressure, 80, 120, and also 72 to 80 pulse speed. But we use it as a model. Acha, this is what we need to know now. Acha, prices, profits, property rights. There are 3 signals that will create incentives. Prices. If the prices go up and down, households and farms will respond differently, right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
If there is information in the market that in a particular sector profit is very high, what will happen? Farms will distract their capital and move towards that particular sector, right? So profit is also a signal through which we can influence resource allocation. If in a particular sector the profit is high, that sends a signal to other farms that the capital will be moving from one sector to another. If the prices go up and down, that also sends signals and also influences the farms and buyer households to organize their expenditure. The third one is property rights. What is property rights? And why do we need it? Right now, all of us are sitting in our own house, right? Attending this class.
Yes, sir.
Acha, when we say it's your own house, that means it has been demarcated that it belongs to you, right? If you know that this particular wealth belongs to you, you will have an incentive to either maintain it or expand it. If it is uncertain that this house belongs to you, will you have an incentive to create wealth?
No, sir.
So another thing that the markets have to ensure is property rights. That this particular wealth belongs to me. So once I know that it belongs to me, within the legal framework, I will have an incentive to either maintain it or expand it. তাহলে কি হবে? I will either hide my wealth or I will have no incentive to create more wealth. So the markets give us three signals: prices, profits, and it ensures property rights. So if property rights are ensured, for example, I want to buy a very expensive phone, but if I know that in Dhaka city there are lots of muggers, I will have no incentive to buy the phone. Right?
Yes,
We
sir.
have an incentive to buy a phone. I won't have an incentive to buy a phone. And if it is systematic, then what will happen? Very expensive phones won't be sold in Dhaka city. So markets have to have a mechanism whereby property rights, that means ownership rights, transfer rights, etc., are ensured. If that is the case, then what will happen? There will be an incentive for wealth creation. Okay, hello. Ito. So prices is very simple. Profits is also simple. Why do we need property rights? Property rights is the right to own, buy, and sell property by consumers and farms. So property rights again creates incentives for consumers and farms to create wealth and be productive. If property rights are uncertain, then there will be chaos. The strong will survive only. The weak shall perish. Right?
Sir, I have a question regarding that, sir.
Carry on.
Sir, communist country গুলো কিভাবে তাহলে মার্কেট কন্ট্রোল করবে স্যার?
Communist country তো property rights ছিল. Maybe people did, they had a lower limit in creating wealth, but communist country people used to buy cars, they used to buy books. ঠিক আছে? But বড় expenditure গুলো করতে পারে নাই. Is that clear now?
Yes, sir.
But nowadays, communism was a wonderful dream. It wouldn't have worked out. ঠিক আছে? That's why it failed, because it goes against human nature. So that's why it didn't work out. But তারপর কি হচ্ছে? There is a trade-off between incentives and inequality. একটু আগে আমরা এটা অ্যাড্রেস করছি. Markets automatically create inequality over time. For example, this course, it's a fair marking, which is great. Somebody who gets a good grade gets a good job later on, and what happens? They enjoy. Their children enjoy. So ultimately, societies become unequal. Now the question is, how much inequality will a society tolerate? A society cannot remain extremely unequal for a long time. It's not a stable outcome. But we are not interested in this. আচ্ছা, এইটা হচ্ছে এখন দেখো, this is a very important one. Queues, lotteries, coupons. How are we allocating resources? Through prices, profits, and property rights, right? Prices, profits, property rights. These
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
are how markets allocate resources. Outside markets, bypassing the price system, there are three ways of allocating resources which every society does. Suppose if we make people stand in a queue, in a line, in order to get a commodity. Line in the kara aage asbe?
Rich people, sir.
Not necessarily.
স্যার বাচ্চারা এবং বয়স্করা এরকম দিত?
People who needed the most.
Hey, so who said that?
I did, sir.
What's your name?
Sir, MD Majid Hussain.
Asam Adil Hussain. People যাদের ডিমান্ডটা সবচেয়ে বেশি তারাই যাবে। Now, iPhone is going to launch iPhone 13 Pro. এখন কি 13 Pro চলছে?
Sir, 13 Pro Max.
আচ্ছা, 13 Pro. Okay. Now, how does iPhone launch 13 Pro Max? তারা একটা প্রি অর্ডার করে না?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Pre-order,
sir.
sir.
আচ্ছা, প্রি অর্ডারটা কারা এই লাইনটার মধ্যে কারা যায়? Those who want the
Sir,
iPhone.
again, rich people, sir.
স্যার, যাদের রিচ হলেও তাদের মধ্যে যদি ডিমান্ড না থাকে তাহলে তো তারা যাবে না।
Just that one again. আচ্ছা, বাংলাদেশে এখন কারো রেশন কার্ড নাই। We are no longer that poor. But if you ask your grandparents, all of them will tell you that they had a blue book. একটা ছোট্ট বুক ছিল। এই বই দিলে রেশন শপে গেলে একটা certain amount of food and certain sugar and লবণ অল্প দামে কিনতে পাওয়া যেত। তো ওখানে কারা যেত? রিচ পিপল?
No, sir.
রেশন
No, sir.
দোকানে কিউ করতো
Those who want them.
যাদের নেসেসিটি ছিল, তাই তো? So it's not a question of when we make people queue up for something, not necessarily that the rich people will be going. People who need that particular product. Those who express their desire for that particular product are those who will go for the queue. A pre-order গেল, তারপর কি করে আইফোন? Once it's launched, তারপর দামটা একটু কমায় দেয় না?
Yes, sir. It drops slowly over time.
Why does this drop slowly over time? Because iPhone is not the company is not a fool. They know very well the pre-order is the one who is willing to pay the higher price in order to get it very quickly, for whatever reason, whether that was a good product or to show off to people.
Sir, sometimes they see the demand, that how much demand are there for the iPhone, then they increase or decrease their prices, sir.
But the thing is, in the first one, who is going to get the iPhone? The people who want it the most, right? People who are prepared to pay a higher
Yes, sir.
price. In the case of ration shop, where basic food is going to be given, ঠিক আছে? তো সেই ক্ষেত্রে কারা যায়? যাদের ডিমান্ড বেশি, ওখানে কি রিচ পিপলরা যাবে?
No, sir.
So whoever has a big demand is the first lot who will stand in a queue. Now, once we use the queue system, we are bypassing markets. A market randomly uses prices. Whoever wants to buy, they come and buy. But with queuing, the resource allocation is done in such a way that it bypasses the price system. iPhone example, and also the ration shop. Where else can you see queuing in Bangladesh? We are not. You read the text, but you think in the context of Bangladesh. কোথায় পাওয়া যায়? Next week, this is how we'll start the class. You tell me where you found the queuing system. Okay.
Agarka passport office.
Good. You think now you think how you can fit that model into the passport office? ঠিক আছে?
ওই মডেলটা তো ফ্লড স্যার, আমরা অনেক করাপ্ট একটা কান্ট্রিতে থাকি।
না, fraud না। Man, what did you collect a passport recently? Have you collected? I collected.
I also collected my passport, but then they sometimes say that if you give money, they will quickly do the thing. Yes, sir.
In passport office, sir,
দালাল in Bangladesh.
Passport is a
যাদের আছে স্যার তাদেরই সমস্যাটা বেশি হয় স্যার।
I would our say as well 555. Exactly 555, and when I went to collect my passport, the last serial was 900. It is humanly impossible for the people working there to distribute. এখন ওনার কোনো রকমের টাকা পয়সার লেনদেন নাই। You just go, you give your fingerprint, and then they give you the passport. That's it. Yes, sir. They're making people stand in a queue. Why? Sometimes we put people in queue to bring order. Don't people stand in a queue in an airport?
Yes, sir.
So you think we are not using the price system there, but resources are allocating. ঠিক আছে, সবসময় you think about different examples in the context of Bangladesh. So who is willing to wait in a queue, or who can be put in a queue? When should people be made to wait in a queue? What type of goods can be sold? Acha, lottery. What is a lottery? 10 people pay 100 taka. Total money that came out from 100 taka, the lottery is 1,000. Only one person will win, and that person wins the prize of 500 taka. এভাবে লটারি গুলো হয় না? What type of goods can we allocate as in lotteries? Or why should governments or governing authorities go for a lottery system? Lots of governments have a national lottery. Somebody becomes rich overnight, but what does the government do with that money? They use that money for various philanthropic reasons. টোটাল যে টাকাটা উঠে এরপরে যা থাকে গভর্নমেন্ট এটা বিভিন্ন কাজে খরচ করে। But is the government using the price system?
No, sir.
Price system. Bangladesh lottery is not popular, but lottery is popular in many industrialized countries. They have a national lottery. In one night, you find somebody winning $20 million, $50 million. Okay, but the total transaction that particular night may have been, say, $500 million. So what does that state do with the money? They take the money and they what do you call it? They use it for other purposes. ঠিক আছে? Now think in the context of Bangladesh, or even in a private company. Can a private company use lotteries? করতে পারে?
No, sir. I don't know, sir.
So they can, sir.
Okay, then you
Provision.
they can. Then you think how they can. This is what we're going to discuss in the next class. This is how we'll start with the next class. Okay, you think, and we have to think in the context of Bangladesh. ঠিক আছে? We'll read Western texts, but we'll try to apply our knowledge in the context of Bangladesh. Okay?
কোয়েশ্চেনটা ছিল যে প্রাইভেট কোম্পানিগুলো লটারি অফার করতে পারে কিনা।
না, যদি প্রাইভেট কোম্পানি লটারি অফার করে, how can they sell it to their staff? যে আমরা লটারি করছি, আমরা প্রতি লটারিতে কোটি কোটি টাকা কামাই করছি, ফার্স্ট প্রাইজ দিচ্ছি 5 লাখ টাকা, তো মানুষ সাথে সাথে জিজ্ঞেস করবে না ফার্স্ট লাখ প্রাইজ মানে যদি 5 লাখ হয়, বাকি 95 লাখ টাকা কি করছো, এটা জিজ্ঞেস করবে না?
Yes, sir, of course, because private companies have to give each and every details to their
এটা যদি করতে হয়,
employees.
There will be accountability issue.
then you think, okay, we do a lottery, total administrative cost হচ্ছে 5 lakhs, we earn 1 crore. So what do we do with this 95 lakh taka? The state does the same thing. They use it for different philanthropic jobs. ঠিক আছে, বিভিন্ন জায়গায় সাবসিডি দেয়, তো এরকম প্রাইভেট কোম্পানিও দিতে পারে। Private company is just a governing authority, like a government. And the last one is coupon. Acha, what is coupon? Coupon system is we identify who needs something and we target that particular group and provide that facility to them. As a student of Brack University, you probably get a certain number of free printing throughout the semester, right?
Yes, sir, we do.
Yes, sir.
Maybe it's 200, 300 pages, whatever it is. Every student in a particular semester gets a certain number of free printing. Now, how does the university organize that? The moment you use your student ID, then at a coupon pay gelo na, system janlo je you are liable for that particular privilege. Coupon system কিন্তু নানান ভাবে resource allocation করা যায়. If we can get the coupon to the right person, then that right person can get that good bypassing the price system. Otherwise, what will happen? I have money, I can go and get the service or the good. Think how you read the text আছে ইয়েগুলো আছে page number গুলো আছে, then you think how you can do it in the context of Bangladesh. And the final one is forced decisions. Sometimes the government acts like a parent. বাবা মা মাঝে মাঝে আমাদেরকে বকা দেয় না, সবসময় কি আদর করে? হ্যাঁ,
No, sir.
মাঝে মাঝে তো বকা দেয়, তাই না? Governments are also like parents. Sometimes they force decisions on their citizens. But to make it stable, to make it acceptable, governments have to force the decisions so that the society accepts it. COVID-19 vaccine distribution ki free হচ্ছে না?
Yes, sir.
Why? Why should the government give it free? Because the government is expected to give it free, not only in Bangladesh, in all the countries. পৃথিবীর কোন দেশে কি কোভিড ভ্যাকসিনটা কি পয়সা দিয়ে বিক্রি হচ্ছে?
No, sir.
Every country is giving this vaccine free to their citizens. ঠিক আছে?
Yes,
Why?
sir.
Because the government is expected to perform this duty. That's why the government forces the decision on us, sometimes like a parent. Again, government also forces us to wear seat belts. Is this a voluntary decision or a forced decision?
Forced.
It's a forced decision.
They're forced, sir.
Yes, but we are as citizens of the state, as citizens of Dhaka city, we are accepting it because the government is expected to do that. Societies, everybody in every society will expect, will tolerate some kind of forced decisions. So when will societies accept forced decisions, and who will enforce these forced decisions? The forced decisions will be enforced by the government if we're talking about the public sector, or a governing authority if we're talking about the private sector. All of us live in flats, কিন্তু আমাদের কি প্রত্যেকটা ফ্ল্যাটে কি একটা গভর্নিং অথরিটি থাকে না?
Yes, sir.
And the governing authority কাজ কি? লিফটের কস্ট তোলা, তাই না? কমন যেসব জায়গায় বাতিগুলো আছে ওগুলো বিল তোলা, যেসব জায়গায় পানির খরচ হচ্ছে কমন, ওগুলো মেইনটেইন করা কি ওই অথরিটির কাজ না?
Yes, sir.
That authority is doing it in the context of the flat, which is a very micro area. Government is doing that in a broad space. That's it. So whatever the government is doing, don't think that it's the government also. Your Black University also has a governing authority, which performs certain functions on behalf of all the students and the staff of the university. That's it. Clear?
Yes,
So,
sir.
okay, we've done this now. Right, there's another one. Oh, so we've come to the end of today's discussion class. What we'll do next week, we'll make a summary discussion of this week's topics, and do ask me questions or throw them in the Facebook group. I'll answer there. And the main thing that we're going to do next week is how to read graphs, how to read ratios, how to interpret marginal calculations. These are the three things that we will be using a lot. So next class will a big portion, a chunk will be spent on how to do these three things: read graphs, ratios, and integrate marginal calculations. Before that, we'll do a summary discussion where I'll expect you guys to come up with questions, etc. And then we'll the last part of next week will be we'll introduce demand analysis. We will see how a demand function is modeled, how changes to the models are made, and what implication that has. Okay, after that we'll look at something called elasticity of demand, etc. So before we stop today, does anybody have any questions regarding today's discussion?
No, sir.
No questions? Nobody has any questions? No questions? So let's stop it here then.
Sir,
Yes, carry on, please.
I have to say something. স্যার আমি ফেসবুক গ্রুপটাতে রিকোয়েস্ট পাঠিয়েছিলাম, আপনি এখন অ্যাকসেপ্ট করেন নাই।
আচ্ছা, তুমি কবে রিসোর্স পাঠিয়েছো? আমি
আজকে দুপুরে পাঠিয়েছি স্যার।
আজকে দুপুরে তো you have to give me for 24 hours time. Okay?
Okay, sir.
So what's your name?
স্যার নিশাত আনসুম।
Nisha Ansam. Okay, I'll check it now. Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. Does anybody else have any question?
No, sir.
So can I stop it here?
Yes.
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'll stop the